during this hearing. Unsworn evidence, such as letters or emails, can never be used as the sole basis for your decision. At this time, if any member needs to recuse themselves from this hearing for one of the reasons that I've explained, please request that a motion be made to recuse yourself from participating in this hearing or voting on this matter. You may do so at this time. Also, at this time, if any member needs to disclose a communication about the subject of this hearing that you've had prior with the applicant or others prior to the hearing, now's your opportunity to disclose those communications.
I attended the planning board meeting as the liaison between the town board and the planning board. It'll have no effect on my decision this evening.
Okay. At this time, the town clerk will swear in the applicant and all witnesses who plan to provide testimony or evidence in this case. And please keep in mind that if anyone in the audience thinks they might want to speak during this hearing, please stand at this time and be sworn. If you'll stand, please, if you're going to be sworn. Thank you. At this time, Joe Hurd will make a presentation on behalf of the town staff.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Good evening, Mayor Casey, members of council, and members of the public in attendance. I'm going to put this together as more of a PowerPoint, so okay, it's up. I want to start by, I think it covers, this is one that we're going to start by looking at the property itself. So you can see there, that's a picture of the aerial photograph of the property. But going back to this, it isn't a single-family residential district like all the properties around it. It's a conforming lot that contains about 4/10 of an acre, contains a 3-bedroom home with a pool and patio. At the rear of the property, that'll be under discussion later. But you can see some of the key points there in the bottom bullets. That just sits on a bluff about 30 feet above sea level. And there is an existing soundfront bulkhead that you can see on this on the left side, just outside of the county is marked on there in red. We do have, for your reference, a topographic map if we need to refer to that. But the key there is that you can see how close those colored lines are to each other just beyond the pool. So that topography drops off pretty quickly once you have the improvements on the property. So this property was part of the Amy Acres subdivision that was created in 1970. There are only 4 lots on the west side of the subdivision. There is another area of it that fronts on Clover Drive, but there are only 4 lots on the south side. So it adjoins within the neighborhood You have across Amy Lane an adjoining property on the sound front, and then you have another property that's to the east, both of which contain 6-bedroom homes. The issue that the applicant is dealing with is that Tall Bluff over the years has been subject to erosion, and it now threatens the stability of the swimming pool as well as the pool deck. They're located at the top of that bluff, and I'll show you a picture of that. So that's what it looks like from the sound looking back on it. And the applicant, in order to address that issue, is proposing a system of 3 tiers of retaining walls that together are 20 feet in height. And you can see it here. This site plan, if you see on the left side, also shows the existing bulkhead along the sound that will not be changed or affected by this project. So again, they're looking at 3 tiers. And this is a cross section of what those are like. What I wanted to point out here are that you have 2 8-foot-high retaining walls, 1 lower one, 1 middle one. The upper retaining wall closest to the pool is only 4 feet in height, and it doesn't require, that element of the project does not require special use permit approval, but the other 2 do, because they're 8 feet in height. So the other thing that's important as we go forward is that you can see the extent of the retaining walls. This isn't a case where they're proposing to stretch them across the entire property from one side to the other. You can see they're just proposing the retaining walls in the area to stabilize the pool. So they're not impacting the adjoining properties as much as something would if it was carried all the way to the edge of the property. So again, 2 8-foot-high retaining walls, 1 4-foot-high, 60 feet across, and you have the existing bulkhead along the sound. It's already there. So this special use permit has 3 different elements that you're dealing with. To allow walls that are up to 8 feet in height, where 6 foot is the max. Allowing retaining walls to support and contain fill, period. And allow up to 6 feet of fill behind the middle retaining wall and 8 feet of fill behind the lower one to help support those walls. And again, the maximum amount of fill on any lot is 3 feet. So I do reference the applicable ordinance sections, but I'm going to jump into the special use permit criteria. So these are the findings that the council has to make in order to approve a special use permit. So 1, that the site is otherwise adequate to accommodate the proposed project. We do know that they do meet the minimum building setbacks, but they don't have to because they're treated as walls or fences. So from that aspect, there's no issue. All the existing improvements, as far as we've been able to determine, appear to comply with the town code, and they're not, in this instance, talking about expanding those things or doing more with the property, just protecting what they already have. They are required to get a camera permit. They have submitted the application for that. So that aspect will be covered by the review by the Division of Coastal Management. And so the planning board found that they meet this first finding in their recommendation. Second, the applicant has demonstrated that the requirements of the ordinance are unreasonable or impractical. We've documented, we talked about some of the issues the applicant is facing with the settlement of the pool and the patio and decks, and the intent of this project to stabilize those. Our current standards, and I referenced them earlier, prevent the applicant from doing that in a reasonable manner. And so the board also found in their favor in their recommendation. Third, the amount of fill is the minimum necessary. One of the things that we liked about this proposal is the way that rather than just one big vertical wall with a ton of fill behind it, it breaks the slope up into 3 distinct retaining walls that are set back, so it minimizes the height of the walls and it minimizes the amount of fill that's necessary. So we think the applicant has made a really good faith attempt to minimize what they're asking for. And the board agreed with that and found that it met finding 3. The fill would not negatively impact adjacent properties is number 4. And again, as we noted, in this case, they designed the retaining walls where they don't extend over the adjoining properties. You received a copy of a stormwater runoff analysis prepared by DEO Engineering, and they talk about how this project will actually improve the stormwater drainage on site. And the one thing I was going to point out all the way back on this slide, you'll note there are gentle basins at each level. There's a red line right there. Over each level, there's some stormwater retention that's occurring under this proposal. So, and I believe that the council did receive an email from an adjoining owner also stating their support for this proposal. So the board did find that the improvements would not negatively impact adjoining property owners, and the finding 4 was met. Finding 5 is that the special use permit is consistent with the town's comprehensive and land use plan and vision statement. You have more detail on that in the staff report, but the key things there are that those documents both support shoreline protection and stormwater management, particularly along the Currituck Sound. And this project, as is proposed, does both of those things. So the board found that it was consistent with the land use plan and the vision. And the last item is that the applicant has submitted a drainage plan. And in this case, they had one prepared by a North Carolina licensed engineer, as I referenced earlier with Deal Engineering. So you have in your packets a copy of that with the details that Mr. Deal included in there. So to wrap up our presentation, this public meeting on June 14th, the planning board determined that all 6 of the findings were met by the proposal, although they did make it a condition that the applicant submit that engineering plan that was underway, and that has been done. So they did find that all 6 were met and voted unanimously to recommend approval to the town council with the following conditions. First, the proposed retaining walls must be certified by a North Carolina engineer. That has been done, so the applicant has already complied with that condition that was submitted to us last week after the packets were already together, but I did want to report that to you. Second, that the applicant must obtain a camera permit. The applicant has submitted that application, so that is underway. Third, that the applicant must obtain necessary land disturbance and building permits. Fourth, that all areas of land disturbance must be stabilized prior to issuance of a certificate of completion. And fifth, the applicant submits a water drainage plan. As mentioned, they've already done that. So that concludes my presentation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions that council might have.
Joe, I would assume if they built this to code, we'd have multiple more retaining walls. Obviously, the retaining walls will be shorter, the fill would be, but you'd have more than the 3 retaining walls if it was built to code. In other words, shorter retaining walls, you'd have more steps going up. It'd be kind of
The applicant's representative from Elsa Marine is with us tonight. I don't even know if that's feasible due to the height and like each retaining wall has to be tied back, and there might be some serious difficulty in achieving that. But I'll let him speak to that when he comes up. But it's a good question. But I think there are some serious challenges with that.
maybe Kevin, can Kevin answer that then?
if you'd like him to come up now.
I mean, if you had shorter retaining walls, you'd definitely have much more.
Kevin, you need, hey,
Yeah. If you'll come up, I'm sorry, if you'll come up to the,
yeah, you'll need to speak into the mic up here, sorry.
Well, actually, the design started out with where Mrs. Gordon wanted to have it, which is, leaving that flat down there, which is basically the 30-foot camel buffer. And she wanted to just stabilize the hill, and that was the original drawing that we came up with. And we did a little bit of looking at what it would take to shorten those walls somewhat, and it would take 2 more walls, which is basically another 24 feet. So now we're going to be almost to the sound front wall. So it just starts growing and growing and growing, and it starts adding a lot of cost too. And then all of the fill, even if we made them 4-foot walls, all of the fills, all of the walls are still, don't pass and would still require a special use permit. So we were right back to the drawing board anyway, because we'd be out there where there wasn't any slope at all, and we'd be filling the entire wall. And so that's how that evolved.
Thank you.
Joe, maybe
Sure.
you might remember a few years ago, we had a similar application for 1398 Duck Road that we did not approve. Can you explain what the difference is between the two of them?
I guess it depends on the interpretation of the word similar. It did involve construction of a retaining wall, but the topography in that case, if you remember, is almost exactly the opposite of what we have here, where we have a steep vertical, almost a vertical slope. There it was. So the 2 key differences there is that we had someone who was looking at building the wall out into the sound, or right joining the sound, trying to recapture area that had been lost to erosion, and they were looking to expand their yard by 30 feet to the west to create a level yard that was about 3 to 4 feet in height, that would go out and then straight down. In this case, the applicant is not proposing to reestablish any lawn area. All they're looking to doing is preventing further erosion of this higher bluff. So if they were looking at doing what 1398 Duck Road was proposing, they wouldn't have a system of tiered retaining walls going down. They would just go straight out 30 feet and then have a 20-foot high wall to, and create 30 feet of lawn area. So that's the main difference, is that the other one was looking at building up their property. This one is stepping down. They're not looking at adding any new property. Does that help explain the difference?
Well, I think the big difference being that they were trying to reclaim land that was already underwater is the big difference. Is that correct?
In the other case, yeah.
In the 1398 case.
Yeah.
I wondered that, so I'm glad you asked that question. I wondered that same thing. And the other difference, and I'm not sure if I'm right about this, is that it expanded the entire length of the property, or width of the property, as opposed to a portion.
Well, those were, the impacts that it would have on adjoining properties were also different than this proposal. But that's really the main thing, is that they were trying to build up. They were basically trying to establish a level lawn that went out 30 feet from where the erosion on that property was. Whereas in this case, they're not doing that.
Joe, could I ask if there was any vegetated requirements? I was noticing it with the interest, the idea of holding a retaining wall, and maybe this isn't a question for the engineer, but will there be growth on those level parts of the 10 feet wide sections of the retaining wall, or is that?
I'll certainly let them speak to the details as far as that goes, but we do require, one of the specific conditions is that it be stabilized. And that's what that means, is that, you know, we have an area that's planted so it's not loose soil.
Thank you.
Joe, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You've gone through, I think, 5 conditions, the 5th being the drainage plan. The draft order only lists 4 conditions. Is that because they've already submitted the
Yes.
drainage plan and we don't need to include that as
And
an
so the
additional condition?
council doesn't need to include that in their approval since it's already
Already
been
been done.
accomplished.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions?
I think the,
All right.
she's going to get a chance.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
get a chance? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna call the next witness
you.
next.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so would the applicant like to come forward and make a presentation? Please do so.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I don't have a formal presentation, but I would like to say the reason that I don't have to touch my property outside where the pool area is because there are still good trees left on both sides. In addition to one standing tree that's 40 years old at the bottom in the grassy area. So I know the importance of trees. We were tree lined when we first bought the house. We had no erosion problems until the tornado hit and Irene hit, and then Michael was the last of the big trees that went, except for my big fig tree. So to answer or to give more statement for one of your earlier questions about building out smaller walls, I would have loved to build out smaller walls. But that would have meant my 40-year-old fig tree would have to go completely. I believe that we're going to save the fig tree. In addition to that, the north side has a lot of trees still going up the hillside, and that hillside is very stable. And it has always been my plan, once I got this cliff stabilized, that I was going to replant the native plants and trees that were there originally at the bottom. There were quite a few. It was almost like a forest. And to the south side, it's an empty lot, which really was heavily, heavily treed, and there are no trees left. So on your statement or concern about vegetation, I am very concerned about vegetation. I'm a big proponent of native, planting native, because that's what we need here. It really helps the ecology in so many ways. So in addition to these walls, it's my plan to put as many native things that I can in those tiered walls and at the bottom. Oh, yes. So I'm Rosemary Gordon. I am the owner and resident at 103 Amy Lane. I'm really proud to be part of the duck community, and I'm hoping that this will stabilize all the erosion and damage that's being caused in my house. So thank you for your support. I'm hoping it's a go.
Any questions for Ms. Gordon?
I think there's one other thing that's important to note in all of this, from planning board to the design and everything. It's all been about trying to stop what normal rainwater does, is it's dragging all that material down the hill. But what this does too is it protects our pool from another Irene level type event that would come over that 6-foot wall. Because if it came over as a 6-foot wall now with something like as major as Irene, she would lose the pool and borderline start losing the house. So I think this is a long-term fix to both the everyday erosion from the rainwater that's just dragging everything down the hill and they're slowly taking her pool deck with it, and also protecting her from a hurricane level event. Thank you.
Hey, Kevin? Kevin?
If you can state your name for the record, just so we'll have it, please.
My name's Kevin Lineberger with Millstone Marine.
Thank you.
We're the contractor.
We have some more
Kevin,
questions
come on
for you,
back.
Ms. Gordon.
Got a question.
Hey, in the design for the water runoff, you got these infiltration areas here, and the one looks like it's a stone wall coming for, it says drainage area through 3,800 square feet.
There's no stone. It's all going to be sand and then stabilized with a little bit of topsoil and seed and grass.
Not there, let's go to the side. It looks like it's coming off the side of the house. Not that drawing.
I don't know what you're referring to.
I'm waiting, right there. The upper where it says infiltration areas, and you got the drainage area, 3,800 square feet. Is that a rock runoff there?
We don't
It says
have it.
it's pavers.
We've got a wood walkway that's gonna be 4 foot down from the pool that sets on top of that short bulkhead. There's no stone. We don't have any stone anywhere.
What
It
this
doesn't say
is,
it on the one you're looking.
That's their existing walkway. It
just
goes from the
stepping
driveway.
stones.
Yeah, stepping
Okay,
stones.
I'm just reading what it says up there.
yeah, they're stepping stones. I'm not sure what the green slotted lines are to represent, but I can tell you that over the past year, I've installed rainwater capture system. And
What we did was she had a survey commissioned, and we took the output of that survey, an as-built survey of her house, and gave that to the stormwater guy to do his thing. And the surveyor located those stepping stones
Where'd you see pavers?
on there. Not part of our application.
See that?
Okay,
Yeah.
mine says fence there.
You're in a different, there's two pictures. Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what these green slotted lines represent, but I,
Engineers area that she's here, and we're just sure where the drainage goes.
yeah, I can tell you, I have successfully captured in the last 3 weeks 500 gallons of rainwater. So my system is working, and I'm sure these additional walls and the swales in the middle of each wall, flat
Further
level,
in, it's further down.
will capture anything else.
Okay.
Mr. Hurd went over earlier the 4 conditions for approval, and those are set forth in the draft order in the agenda package. Are you in agreement with those conditions?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, I can add, I tried to start this project more than a year ago, and I had applied for a CAMA permit and was granted the permit last fall. Unfortunately, by the time we got through this whole process, it had expired, so we've now put in for the new CAMA permit.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for these witnesses? Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your consideration.
Is there any other evidence to be presented in this case? Any remaining questions from council? Okay, at this time, we'll close the public hearing, and you may now deliberate. There is if you are inclined to grant the permit, there's an order in your package, a proposed order that contains proposed findings of fact. It contains your proposed conclusions, and it contains the proposed 4 conditions that have been proposed by the staff, and as you heard in the testimony, has been approved by the applicant. So at this time, you may deliberate.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Any further discussion by council?
No.
Seems all in order. A good plan.
I'll entertain a motion on approval of SUP 23-006.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve SUP 23-006, a special use permit application by owner Rosemary Gordon for allowances relating to fill and grading activities associated with the construction of 3 Soundside retaining walls at 103 Amy Lane with the findings of fact and conditions proposed herein.
Okay, fine.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, legislative public hearings. We have none at this time. Item number 7, old business items deferred from previous meetings. A discussion and consideration of Resolution 23-09, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Duck, North Carolina, revising the personnel policies of the Town of Duck. Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So this is a continuation of the discussion we had at your last meeting. We proposed during the budget preparation and discussion process a few changes to our personnel policies, and just following up on that. So there are 3 that we're going to talk about this evening. One would change the wording in our personnel policy regarding vacation time accrual. That would allow prior government service outside of the town of Duck to count towards someone's years of service as we calculate that for their leave time, vacation leave time. The second was to implement a retiree health insurance supplement, or a stipend for retirees that retire after July 1, 2023. And also allowing these retirees to participate in our health insurance plan. And the third was to implement a tuition assistance program. When we discussed this, and I'm not going to go into reread the slides to you, the first one we'll do is the vacation accrual. Council had some discussion with me last month about this particular change, and the questions really came about, well, what do you mean by prior government service? And does it need to be continuous? So we took that, and you have in your staff packet some options related to this vacation accrual. We'll say, just remind you that this will impact 17 of our 40 employees, and all but 3 of those are in public safety. So what's in the resolution that you have in front of you tonight for consideration is language that would change the years of service definition in the vacation leave accrual section of our personnel policy. Presented you with 2 options based on the discussion we had last month. The first, it adds the word federal into the language that we provided last time. So no other change other than, so it would now read a unit of local government, so town, city, or county, state, or federal government. So basically any prior government service would count towards someone's total years of service when we try to calculate what their accrual rate is for vacation leave. Option B here adds the word federal, and it also tries to make it so we're recognizing someone's continuous service, but not really completely continuous. So we don't want someone that has worked for, say, the federal government for 10 years and has been out of government service for 10 years and coming here and counting all that. So this says, so the prior service, which doesn't need to be contiguous with the service in Duck, must have ended no more than 2 years earlier than the date of initial employment with Duck. So someone that's been out of the government game for less than 2 years, when they come here, we'll go ahead and reset that clock for them. So that's the vacation leave accrual one, and I'll pause there and see your reactions to that.
I think option B is stronger. It closes a loophole that's there that we don't want to have to deal with.
I can also agree that option B gives you some, a little more control. Just curious why you chose 2 years and not 3, for example.
No particular reason, other than 2 years is someone leaves government service, goes into the private sector and says, you know what, the government sector, the public sector really wasn't that bad, and comes back. And typically that's going to be a fairly short time away from the public sector.
I was kind of thinking, too, of maybe just family situations, taking care of someone that required somebody to leave service, just not for doing anything other than just having to stay at home to care for somebody. So that's why I was curious if the 2 years is perhaps too stringent, but I don't want to make us rewrite everything. I was just curious where you came up with it.
I think that's a valid point. I mean, I think you just have to pick some, I mean, if you want to have that, you have to pick something. But I think you're right, 2 years for childcare might not be enough. I mean, you can pick another number. Or you could say something like, not to complicate the world, but you could say something like, as long as the years you were away from public service don't exceed the amount of time you were in public service, it'll get counted. Like they used to say that for your pensions. It's like if you leave a company and you're gone from that company, if you were there for 7 years and you return to that company in less than 7 years, you get credit for your pension that you had before. You know, I mean, something like that, or just make 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, but.
I like option B. I think we should keep it simple, and I think 2 years can always be changed in the future if 2 years is not working. But generally, if someone's leaving the federal government, they're probably within a 2-year period of time looking for another job. And it's probably a reasonable period of time to find another job, perhaps, in a municipality. I like option B with the way it is, and it can always be up for debate at a later time.
I mean, we can change these policies. I mean, they're yours, so we can change them anytime we want. And believe me, if the 2 years is a problem, I'm going to be coming back to you and say, hey, 2 years is a problem. Here's why, and then we would have a specific case as to why we want to modify the policy.
Right. I worry about changing policies just for specific cases, but since we're developing this policy and the spirit of the policy is to be more inclusive, then I think, it bears re-looking at if you run into any trouble with it.
Okay, so I'm hearing that is option B the general consensus. Obviously, we'll ask you to take an official action in a little bit. Okay. The next one was the retiree health insurance stipend. So again, I'm not going to go through all the points that we discussed with you last month, other than to say, just remind you that we're the only town on the beach that does not have some sort of retiree health benefit. And then there's the data there from the North Carolina League of Municipalities survey. So,
Would you go back to that just 1 second?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to take a quick, okay, thank you.
so we didn't have any discussion relating to the change of how we would determine if someone is eligible. So we're still saying they need to be eligible for unreduced retirement under the local government employees retirement system and have served a minimum of 15 years with the town of Duck at their date of retirement. This graph just shows, and we shared this with you last month, just how this benefit would roll in. It would not hit your budget until fiscal 28, at which point it would be, that's just one employee at that point. And then it peaks out in fiscal 44 with 15 employees. And that's based on our employee census, the current employee census. Things change. So in listening to the discussion last month, this is small and I apologize for that. Option A is as it was written. So as it was written in the original information we gave you, there was some discussion last month about requiring proof of insurance and that someone is actually paying for their medical insurance through another provider if they don't stay on our policy. That was already in the language that we provided. So option A is as it was. Option B, just, it punches it up a little bit. It says if they're on the town's plan, the retiree must pay their portion of the premium by the date established by the finance administrator prior to the stipend being applied. So you need to pay your portion before the stipend kicks in. And then if the premium is not paid, the coverage will be terminated and the eligibility for the benefit may be forfeited. So that's, and it's also here saying that if they're not on our plan, again, they still have to furnish that proof of insurance and proof that they paid for that before the stipend is applied. And then option C says they must stay on our plan. But again, adds the language about the retired employee must pay their portion of the premium before the stipend is applied. And again, they need to, otherwise they forfeit coverage. So those are so option A is the way it was. And then options B and C add some additional language with option C saying they must stay on our plan.
I like option C. I just think that it helps our employee when they retire to stay on our plan and gives them a stipend to help pay for it. If they're not on our plan, they were going to probably do a cheaper plan, so we're giving them money that in fact wasn't geared to help them pay for the insurance, and or if someone else provides insurance for them. So I like option C. I think if they want to stay on our plan, then we give them a stipend to help pay for that until the point in time they're eligible for Medicare or whatever. That's my opinion.
I'd like to chime in and say that I prefer option B because looking at the chart that was super helpful about the other towns and what they're offering, this is still much less than the other towns, and the whole purpose of this is for kind of recruitment and also appreciation for service. This plan in Duck wouldn't kick in until the 15 years, right? So
Correct.
It's already more restrictive there, and the other towns are paying more. And I think when someone leaves, that it's, I do agree that they might have to go to a different health plan because it is perhaps less expensive because they're in a circumstance that requires that. I mean, I think if somebody can afford the good plan that the town is offering, that they would probably opt to stay in there, but I'm trying to look at the broader picture. Someone might be able to go on their spouse's plan, or they might have to downgrade their plan. And so for all these reasons, I would be in support of option B. And I appreciate the opportunity to look at a few things, so thank you.
I'm go along with option B also.
When somebody starts with the town, when they're a new employee, are they offered choices in healthcare, or is it just one plan that we use?
Yeah, we have just one plan, Mr. Mooney. So it's their option is they can add a spouse, they can add children, or they can add family.
Just a question, Drew, and I know you go out for rates almost every year. Obviously, we have a very competitive plan, and both cost-wise as well as coverage-wise. So at this point in time, the plan, you consider the plan for the town an adequate plan?
Assuming my wife isn't watching this, yes. So our plan is grandfathered, which means it does not meet the current requirements of the Affordable Care Act, which has the effect of keeping the premiums down. What now I'm finding from my personal experience, and I know some others in the room have had, particularly for preventative care, which the ACA or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, requires that the insurance pay for, employees are coming out of pocket. So just a simple diagnostic test that my wife had to have, or kind of a routine thing that turned into diagnostic, was almost a $700 for us out of pocket. So we are going to be looking at our insurance plan now that we have a new insurance broker, to see if there are ways to restructure our health insurance program. We don't want to get the premiums out of line, but we also want to acknowledge the fact that our employees are having to come out of pocket pretty significantly at times under the plan.
I guess my other concern is, and once again, I look at businesses and municipalities, and in fact, they're in deep trouble because of benefits that they accrued many years ago and now can't pay the liability. I don't really want to tap that with future councils, but I just think that in fact, we're the youngest town on the beach, so the others are going to have a lot more employees, and we'll see how they do, and it's going to obviously result in significant tax increases as the retirement goes up in the older towns. And I just think we got to be cautious on that as we look to the future. And I know right now the projection is fairly small, but it could grow exponentially based upon health costs.
And I
just want to be cautious, going into the next couple of years.
And I would say that that's the primary driver of this not coming in as a retiree health insurance plan. So we're not saying we're going to offer to pay for the retirees' health insurance as other towns have done. So their liability continues to increase as medical costs continue to increase. With a stipend, it's $200 subject to appropriation in the annual budget. So it's there. It does not accrue a liability does not accrue at the same rate that you're going to have in these other towns, where they have to deal with all the actuarial tables and all that. And I came from an organization where we had retiree health insurance, saw what I did to our balance sheet, and I actually recommended to the council there that we discontinue that benefit. So
Future councils can always address and change its stipend also.
Right.
On a yearly basis.
Correct.
So I think I'm a little confused about what we're trying to accomplish. I thought I understood it, but I'm a little confused now. So I have some questions. Right now, when one of our associates meets eligibility for retirement, and they do so, do they currently have the option to continue to buy our health insurance?
No, sir.
They do not. Okay. And so my thought was that we were trying to find some way, if they needed it, to bridge the gap for them if they retired before age 65.
Yes, sir. Correct.
So if that was our objective, then I think if we let them continue to buy our coverage at the same amount they're paying now.
So
that what we're
currently
saying?
the employee pays nothing for their own insurance.
So, okay, so what if they were going to stay on it, we would ask them to pay what we pay for that insurance?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that was the idea of the stipend, was to try to offset a
Right.
portion of that. Yes, sir.
Right. So if we allowed them to pay what we pay, and we gave them a $200 a month stipend toward that, I would expect that that would be a fairly reasonable cost for an insurance plan versus what you would get on the open market. And it would be far more extensive in the coverage because you would get dental and everything else that goes with it. So, I mean, I think that would be a big improvement from what they have right now. Yeah?
Yes, sir, without question.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So then, if they left our employment and they could find insurance cheaper on the outside market, why do we want to give them the $200? Or if they went to work somewhere else and got other insurance, why do we want to give them $200? To me, it then becomes just an enhancement of retirement income as opposed to anything else. That's why I like option C. I would even be in favor of some sort of a sliding scale on option C, where based on the number of years of service, we would reduce the amount they pay of that total premium. Okay, because in my mind, the objective is to bridge them to age 65 to then they can get on medical insurance. So you could say something if you go back to the, like the other towns, can you put that back up? Like, if you've got 20 more years of service, it looks like they pay 100% in Southern Shores. In Nags Head, 25 and up, 100%, et cetera. Now, I don't know that we want to go like that, but we could put something that says, if you retire with this amount, we'll pay, you can buy insurance from us and we'll only charge you 50%. If you got this many years, we'll charge you 25% if you got this many years, and then even just forget about the $200.
So, the reason we did it
Okay,
with a stipend as opposed to that approach
because
is
of the growth of the liability.
the liability,
all right.
$200, the liability is fixed, or whatever that is,
Okay.
subject to appropriation. And I will point out, one of the things you mentioned, Mr. Shiano, is if someone went to work somewhere else and got insurance, this policy it does say that if you go to work somewhere else and you get insurance, you're not eligible.
Okay.
Yep. So this is just for folks, and the reason really that I like the option to go somewhere else other than our plan is they may have found a better plan somewhere else that is more to their liking. Maybe they've moved and they're in a different health insurance network. Maybe they're on a spouse's plan.
Okay.
Well, you just said it there because someone else is now paying for their insurance. I still go back to option C. And the other thing is, you look at retirees, and certainly coming out of business, and I'm sure Tony's seen this too. Companies that guarantee health plans and in the future have changed those with a stroke of a pen. They've changed those and put them into other plans or disallowed plans. So, you look at the other towns and what they're doing today. That doesn't say tomorrow they're not going to change what they do as they start to get into those liabilities. I just think we have more control if they're on our plan, and we are helping them bridge to that point in time. I think once you get onto other insurances and controlling that was my point last time, how do you really control that? And,
Other than the way the policy says they need to provide proof that they're insured and the premiums have been paid to our satisfaction.
And if they get cheaper insurance, then why are we offsetting their cost?
Well, I think I'd just like to add to that, and I certainly understand your point about wanting to be, controlling costs. So I think that this 200 idea works for that. I think that trying to broaden that benefit to something beyond our plan takes into account the fact that this person has worked for 15 years for the town or more, and also may have family to consider, dependents and or spouse that makes another plan holistically more, in totality more affordable for them, but even though, because I think we have to just take it out of just the employee, I guess is what I'm saying, and broaden it to perhaps their family, because certainly maybe one person it might be affordable, but you add those dependents and all of a sudden you've got more to consider. So I think it just gives us a little more flexibility to assist this employee that's worked with us for 15 plus years. And I know time flies when we're having fun. I can't believe how many people have already been here for 15, 20 years. It's amazing. When someone comes up even for 5 years, I can't believe it. But I just think it gives us the control, but it also allows that person a little more flexibility. So I'm still in favor of option B, although I respect your opinion on option C.
I don't see where option B surrenders any of our control as you presented it. they've got to prove that they paid the premium before they're going to get the stipend from us. So I'm more in favor of option B. People move to other parts of the country, and their old health care is just not tenable wherever they go.
Well, why don't we just say everybody who retires with 15 years gets $200 a month more?
Then they're not proving that they've paid for their health insurance.
I know, but what's the difference? You know, I mean, it's like, what are we trying to do? Boost retirement income or help them bridge the gap till they can get Medicare or Medicaid?
I think it helps them bridge the gap because they may want to stay on this plan, but they may need to go to another plan. So what's the difference for us if we're just trying to help them? It just gives us a little more flexibility.
Okay.
I really think if you look at these other towns, that some of these towns could be taking some of our employees away from us just because of this benefit. That 100% is very sweet.
Well, the proof is not there because they're coming here and not going there.
That's
Which
true
is
too, but-
a counter argument, but I kind of agree with Tony. It's kind of a retirement enhancement if in fact we're not really controlling it from here. What we're trying to do is help offset their costs as they bridge to retirement. And the best way to do that is you're on our plan and we're going to give you a stipend against it. And as I say, you can always address the stipend and the amount in the future. If our health care is, escalates 10%, maybe we increase the stipend by 10% or by the increase. I mean, councils can deal on that in the future.
Right.
I mean, I think we lose control once it goes to option B.
Are you concerned about more people taking advantage of it if we went to option B, so therefore we'd be paying out more than, more $200?
I don't, you don't know. How do you know?
I'm
Well,
asking-
the answer to that is,
You're going to be,
the answer to that is right there. It's $200. That's what we're going to pay. It doesn't change, whether it's option B or it's option C.
correct.
It doesn't change. What that option B, though, allows somebody who decides to move to Iowa, that if their health care benefits from here don't quite comport with whatever's going on in Iowa, they can change and still get the $200, provided that they've paid their premiums.
Well,
So I
actually-
think that we have to consider that a lot of people, especially because the cost of living here is so high, a lot of our employees, when they finish, are going to look to relocate somewhere where their dollar is going to go farther. And I don't think that I think it would be wrong for us to try to control what they choose as their own health care.
Well, then
We're
maybe-
not changing any of our payment. It's just a different choice for them.
well, then maybe we'll make a qualifier to option B, and that is if you move to a state, in fact, where you can't basically take this insurance with you, then in fact, then you can therefore, negotiate for your own insurance with your own agency. And you make a good point. You may be able to go to a state that doesn't take this insurance. So maybe there's a caveat to option B. I just think the more control we have, the more control is going to be in the future.
Just out of curiosity, do we know offhand what the monthly amount is that we pay per employee for a family plan? What would that number be?
We'll have to look, that's not a number we keep in our head. We'll have to look it up.
What?
Well, I don't want to delay this for another month, so if we can get it tonight, that would be good.
Ms. Barnes has it in her head. I don't have it in mine.
Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So a family plan's a little over $1,800 a month. An employee only is $498, and then the employee spouse and employee children plans are around $1,200 to $1,300 a month.
$1,800 a month.
So the town
That's
pays
pricey.
the employee, so that 498, and then if it's employees adds family members to it, we pay 75% of the total.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's a very generous approach to adding, especially adding family members. So the town does supplement quite a bit for current employees. Again, when they retire, it's $200 to bridge. It is bridging the gap until you get to turn 65 and you're eligible for Medicare.
well, That's more than I thought it would be. They probably could do better. They wouldn't get the same coverage, let's put it that way, but they could get medical coverage and dental for less than $1,800 a month.
For a family,
But it wouldn't be as extensive, and it would have higher deductibles, but
And you know, the real reason, you know, we're saying that we're offering this ability to go somewhere else is we're trying to encourage people to be good consumers of everything, right, including medical insurance. So it allows them to make the choice. And it's up to the council, you know, whether or not that, you know, they have one choice, which is to stay with us, or they have, you know, ability to find other insurance.
so I guess that being the case, then I would make a change, and I will stay on our insurance at all. I would just say they, you know, they can, if they, I mean, do we let them stay on our insurance now if they want?
No.
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 So
Why
what,
wouldn't we want them to be on it? Because we're only in 200, regardless of where they go. So what's the difference if they stay on our plan that they're used to and they like versus going to another plan?
Usage, but it'll continue to add, you know, to the you know, the usage. But I guess I'm okay. I'm okay with option B the way it is. I think it's going to be a lot of work for the employee and for us, because we're going to have to do a monthly, they're going to have to do something to show they paid their bill every month, and we're going to have to do something to verify that they say paid their bill every month. I mean, if we want to sign up for that, I guess that's okay.
yeah, and I think for the number of employees that will be on it, I think it's manageable to be able to administer. And you know, the policy is kind of one layer, and then there's the administration end of it that will develop as an administrative policy that people will have to follow. And then the last one was just the tuition assistance program, and there really wasn't a whole lot of discussion about that at the last month's meeting. We budgeted $9,600 for that this year. It's a maximum of $1,200 per fiscal year per employee that's participating. We picked $9,600 just to have a number in the budget, and then we'll have to see how the first year goes, and then we'll come back to council with any adjustments we need to make as we work on the 24-25 budget. So what we're looking for then is consideration of a motion to approve Resolution 2309 to amend the Town of Duck personnel policies. And then we need to know, part of that motion, which options for vacation accrual and the retiree health as part of that motion. And then we'll clean up the final resolution for the mayor to sign subsequent to the meeting.
Well, I think you've got concurrence on the vacation accrual, option B. I think everyone agreed with option B on the vacation. I think you've got a split vote on the retiree health insurance. So looks like consensus is for B, if I count the votes here at the table.
Correct.
Looks like a 3-2 split on that.
So we'll need Mr. Mayor, I guess we'll need a motion to approve that resolution with option B on the retiree health and, make sure I get it right, both option B. So option B with vacation accrual and option B with retiree health. So that would be the motion to approve that resolution with those options.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2309, resolution of the Town Council revising the personnel policies of the Town of Duck, using option B for both of the areas of discussion.
As well as the tuition assistance.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, so that resolution has the tuition assistance in it. We didn't have any options built into that.
Any discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Drew. Thank you. Item number 8, discussion consideration of authorizing a public hearing on ordinance 23-08, an ordinance establishing a definition for drug paraphernalia sales in the zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Once again, Mayor and Council. I'll try to keep this simple and straightforward. But what we're proposing with this ordinance number 23-08 is to add a definition for drug paraphernalia sales. And that would be in the definition section of the zoning ordinance. We had worked with our town attorney, Mr. Hobbs, and he has developed the definition that's proposed in this text amendment ordinance. So council originally approved this over a year ago. We first ran across the issue in January 2022, and it just took a little while. It wasn't a front burner issue for us or the town attorney, and so we had a couple of other things come up in the interim that spurred things along. So the issue we have is that there are businesses in Duck that sell things that are defined by state law as drug paraphernalia. You know, and we list some things in there, pipes, bongs, rolling paper, small spoons, you know, things that could be used for certain purposes related to drugs, but can also be used for other things. So you can go to the convenience store at the gas station and get those, but that doesn't make them a drug paraphernalia sales business. So our interest in this was asking and working with the town attorney, to the degree possible, can we further define, is there a magic point at which a business becomes a drug paraphernalia sales business? So what he has drafted, I'll be honest with you, from a staff standpoint, it's not as detailed as we would like. You know, we'd love to be able to say if 25% of what they sell is so if they have X amount of square feet, it's this. But that's just not the way that the case law and other stuff is set up. So he has made a recommendation to include this definition. It does help the staff in terms of giving us at least something to hang our hat on as we're making interpretations regarding different types of businesses and how to best classify them. So that's what you have before you right now is that proposal. The planning board discussed this pretty thoroughly. They had some good questions about, you know, why can't we just say, you know, we use the word in the staff report, I use the word primary business was for this, and that was probably a mistake on my part because they took primary to mean 51% of whatever they're selling is drug paraphernalia. So we don't want to go that far, but Anyway, they had some good pointed questions about why we couldn't develop something more specific, but you know, our town attorney is comfortable with what he's drafted, so questions of that nature are probably best directed toward him. But the planning board, after a lot of discussion at their June meeting, ended up voting unanimously to recommend approval of the ordinance you have before you. And this time, we're just asking the council's consideration of setting a public hearing for this item at your August meeting. And you have a recommended motion in there if that's something you wish to do. And I'd be glad to answer any questions the council might have. Our town attorney may want to add some comments of his own.
Yes, Mr. Hurd, the only comment or additional information I'll provide is there is an attachment B in the agenda item that has the statute. And sort of state law preempts local regulation of this to the extent that it's already set out definitions and things of that nature. But what we're focusing on is under subsection B of the statute where it says the following, along with other relevant evidence. And so it's that phrase that we've sort of seized upon and added to the code the two additional provisions as relevant evidence. And so I think it's all recognized that these will be looked at on case-by-case basis, but what the ordinance will do is provide some guidelines or assistance for the planning staff to try to administer and try to regulate the businesses as necessary. So that's all that I really have to add to it.
Could I just add, the genesis of coming to us with this was, I'm trying to kind of equate it with something else we've ever done, but we had instituted a law that said that our permitted and prohibited use table, we have drug paraphernalia sales as a prohibited sale use. Am I understanding this correctly?
That's correct.
So then somebody sells something like that, and that's what raises the flag, and then we have to decide if it's within reason.
Yeah, so we've had two businesses that have approached the town, and really a third, short of, but, you know, and they said, we want to sell these types of items. Do you have limitations on that? And we had to work with them to interpret what is or isn't allowed. And, you know, in both cases, they excluded things that they originally wanted to sell. But we said, that's probably taking it a step too far. You know, if you just do this, this, and this, you're good, and we'll classify you as retail.
Okay.
Because a vast majority of what they were selling had nothing to do with
Right.
drug paraphernalia.
Which is like sort of an
Yeah.
ancillary thing. Okay, thank you. Because I know I'm thinking of fireworks, which we of course prohibit, but we can't prohibit a sale of. So I'm just in my head trying to figure out what prompted this. And of course, I'm thinking of we don't allow pornography stores or something like that. I don't know. There's some stuff we don't permit, and this is one of them, that we're just like, you're not having that kind of store in the town, but if there's just a little something that's on the shelf, it's not considered. Okay, thank you. Just trying to refresh my memory.
Yeah, it was that distinction because the code had the use table, but it didn't really go any farther than that, except by just looking at the statute. And so this just gives planning staff, it just bolsters their ability to administer the use table more so than they had before, and it does give them some guidance that they've essentially been using, but I think it does sort of codify that to give them the ability to distinguish between a very incidental sale versus one that is the predominant or a significant part of the sales for the store.
So the question here is we're talking about a public hearing, correct? Correct. So I'd like to make a motion that we authorize a public hearing on ordinance 23-08, an ordinance establishing a definition for drug paraphernalia sales in the zoning ordinance.
Thank you first, Joe. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Joe. Item number 9, items referred to and presentations from the town attorney.
Mayor, I have nothing this evening unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Robert.
I just have one question relating, maybe it's not in order, I don't know, can I ask him about the ordinance, the NC ordinance on paraphernalia? Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know if that train left the barn. So the North Carolina ordinance that you mentioned here, is everything that they list illegal?
Well, the things that are listed,
I mean, it's a definition.
these are definitions. They are not necessarily, there are definitions in subsection A, but then subsection B gets into determining whether
Or not it's
there's
being-
evidence as to whether those things are maybe drug paraphernalia as
Okay.
far as,
Okay.
it's a little odd the way they do it, but
Yeah.
it's such a broad topic that I guess the state did the best they could as far as defining these things. And so go ahead. Oh, okay. So that's the best explanation I can
Okay.
give, is that I think that in addition to what the state statute says, the planning staff just has to use their best judgment along with the guidance you give them in the ordinance to evaluate applications and also sales that are going on in the town.
Okay. Could we prohibit a vape shop or a head shop, so to speak, in town?
It depends on of this criteria and how much of what they're doing,
Okay.
but a short answer is probably, if that's the main retail product that they're selling, then yes, would not allow that.
Okay.
If all those products, or the substantial number of them fit within these definitions, then I think it's a legitimate, because you've already prohibited the use in your code. I mean, that's there now.
Right.
This just tries to expand it to give planning staff a little better guidance as far as how to distinguish between the gas station selling very
some
small,
wrappers or something,
or cigarette, wrapper or something, versus something like you described that is more substantial use.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Robert. Going on to item number 10, items referred to and presentations from the town manager and staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The department directors will give their reports in order. Mr. Hurd, Chief Black, Chief Ackerman, Ms. Nickens, and then Ms. Barnes.
All right. So that's where I stay up here. So we're going to be a lot shorter this time. So what you see here is we had a comparatively busy month of last year. And then if you look, these are our end of the fiscal year figures in columns. On the right, you see the 21, 22, and 22, 23 figures. So what you see there is we ended up, we're trending low good amount of the year, but ended up substantially similar to where we were last year. You know, -1% is nothing. So that's, you know, really the same level of activity we had the previous year, which was a really, really big year for us. So overall, the permit activity was actually pretty strong. And looking at permits issued in June, now again, our activity does go down over the summer months because no one wants to deal with traffic, even contractors. But you can see north of the pier there, we have clusters in the Sanderling and in Carolina Dunes. To the south, not a lot of activity at all. You know, really, it's spread out and not as much activity as we're used to seeing. So we had no new homes that were permitted. We did have 2 substantial additions. So I just want to move into the project updates and let you know that we did hold, as Jim Gould mentioned last month, we had a pre-bid conference that occurred June 27th. We did have a third bidder who attended that, third potential bidder. The bid opening will be on July 11th, and we'll see what we get on that. So that'll be for a large brick project. We're going to be kicking off the west side related to the shoreline protection project. So that may start as soon as July. And we've been negotiating with the contractor and their subcontractor so that they don't disrupt our events with drilling and things like that. So we've been working with them to minimize that. The tent survey is still open. We're hoping to get input from visitors on that. And then, you know, get back with you for more formal decisions in the fall. The one thing Sandy Cross is really taking some initiative with this to arrange a meeting with the different tent vendor companies so that we can give them a forum to share concerns that they have, and also for us to gain a better understanding of the issues. So as
FEMA's let us know we're kind of in the short rows still with our final award. I reached out to Senator Tillis's office and Congressman Murphy's office and talked to members of their staff and actually sent a letter to Murphy's office, and they're providing some encouragement to FEMA to move this process along a little bit. Latest conversation I had was this afternoon with Congressman Murphy's office, and they've actually gone to a couple different points of contact in FEMA. So we'll keep trying to push that along.
All right, good evening, everyone. And I'll start with a picture from yesterday's parade, just a few shots of the work before and during the parade. From our aspect, we did have one medical call towards the end, heat-related. They did transport, but it was minor, just so you know, in case you saw the the ambulance in play there. But other than that, pretty successful event, as you've heard from the beginning of our presentation, and I just thought I'd share a couple pictures. So, all right, let's get to our June activities. We had training hours, 193.3, which if you pay attention, that's pretty low because it's June. So we're busy doing calls. Our inspections are down, but what is up, I added and thought would be interesting to show, is an assist town. So that's when we go to the events. If they need help with tables or something, they put it in our log as assist town. So we had 10 different events recorded at about 12 and a half hours. So it kind of takes the place of the inspections in the summer. Total calls for service through June, 204. Again, I'd like to show the trending data, no panic, either up or down. It's, if anything, we're a little bit down, and this one was the most striking. I'm always fascinated when I pull these numbers every month. This is June this year, so we've only had 65 calls. We're down from 97 last year. Again, what's that look like? So when I show you this, you can see we're down in alarm activations. So what do we categorize in alarm activations? It's usually bad batteries. Often alarms are set off due to cooking. And so Trey and I were talking today. It's like, I didn't pull every call to look at what the reasons were, and I can do that. But what was still going on last year versus this year is more people were cooking. So I would guess, and I'd be glad to pull that for you, but definitely alarm activations are down. I will also say, hopefully they're down because people are changing batteries and we're not getting that call too. So, and then you just take a few differences in any of the other categories, and there you have the difference. When you map it out by a pie chart, we're about 71% EMS, which is now a national average about between 70 and 80%. So we kind of see that as the population grows. So this month is June. We always, it's interesting, Merrick is always in here about this time, is we do surf rescue training. So just to make sure everyone understands our role with surf rescue, they basically get wet and we're there to assist, and when they get to shore, we'll take over. We're not afraid to go waist deep and help them out, but we depend on the youngins that are very fit to go out and bring subjects in, and then we will help them. So we do cross-train every June, and we canceled the first Tuesday because of bad weather and had to cancel the second Tuesday. So I have a couple pictures. They're really boring because they're in the bay. But so these are two pictures side by side of line pulls. So if they go out in rough water, especially they go out with a buoy with a line on it, and we help them bring the line back in with their subjects. So we did this in the bay with them. So that's just a couple pictures of the guards teaching us, basically. And then we also went over how we're going to transport patients. So we use the SCED here. The SCED is probably our most important thing we carry because we use it in houses, we use it on the beach, everywhere. So we went ahead and did some SCED training. But more importantly, every June we eat. And so we provide hot dogs for all the guards. And so we did our normal night. So I just thought I'd throw a few pictures in there. Turning to the budget, so I thought I'd update you on the public safety building. Thank you again for those repairs. If you look at the picture on the left, that's the front of the building. That's them taking the current siding off. The middle picture is showing the new gray on the right and the new siding on the left. And then it said police and fire up there. And so the firefighters took it upon themselves to go ahead and repaint those police and fire signs. They look really good. They're going to be great going back up. So it was a group effort. They're probably almost done with siding, and then the painting will take just a little bit longer. Tomorrow, they will start the asphalt section that we've identified for this year's project. And so we have apparatus in different bays right now for probably the next 30 days for the apparatus. Lighter vehicles we can do probably within 10 to 14 days. So you'll see them tearing it up tomorrow and working on the front. It's in the truck 11 bay, which is the farthest bay, and then a postage stamp piece in the front of the property. So those things are going on. The last thing left will be some interior drywall repairs. We were able, money's tight. We were able, because we had definitely some plywood that needed to be replaced. not as much as we thought. So we were able to go ahead and do what is the gym and the building out back, and that was a maybe depending on where we were with plywood. So they were able to put that into this project, which is really good. It looks amazing. I know it's the same color, but if anyone ever really walked around there, you can see a big difference. So thank you for that. And then, I'm sorry, Chief, I'm gonna steal your thunder, but today, yes, Officer Knockin did come over and say, I've got a problem. The deer's mama, unfortunately, deceased and was found, and they knew this fawn was out there. So Trey and Justin went out in waders, actually a lot farther out in waders than they thought they were going to do, to bring the fawn in, and then there's just a couple pictures. So again, great effort by public safety today, and probably get better video. You'll one-up me next month if there's video. And then with that, I'll take any questions with what's going on this summer.
What do we do with the fawn?
I know, where'd the fawn go?
It went to rehab, right? Yep, rehab.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it. Any questions? All right.
Thank you, Chief.
I know, I bored the last folks out.
You should have sworn him in at the end of the meeting, we'd have a full house.
Think about it. All right. June is crazy out there for us. There is no doubt the gates are wide open. Fortunately, nothing crazy has happened, but they're definitely keeping us busy. Traffic enforcement's right on par. Vehicle crashes, I expected a increase this month, but we actually had the exact same number prior month, which was a bit surprising to me. But the accidents we're seeing are consistently folks stopping to allow people to cross the road at marked crosswalks and non-crosswalk areas. But fortunately, the majority of them are relatively low-speed collisions without injuries. Business checks, still a big priority at night for us, and then extra patrols were down quite a bit. So 1,209 calls overall for the month. Looking at traffic, we saw 282,434 vehicles enter DUC in the month of June. So that was a 22% increase from May. Expect that to continue to go up as this month progresses. We're still seeing about 61% of vehicles either come to or from Corolla. So that's remaining very consistent. We will have, in the budget, you authorize new dedicated traffic counters for the north and south end of town. I hope to get them up by the end of the year, but that really will provide us a baseline going forward to be able to look at that data in some very new ways. So looking forward to that. Happy to report that we had 3 officers achieve their intermediate law enforcement certificate. So the state, North Carolina, issues these certificates based on their experience and training. So intermediate is the midpoint. Most officers achieve that in the 7, 8, 10-year mark in their career, and then they move on to advanced after that. So we're lucky. We have a high number of officers that have made this, at least the intermediate achievement, and then all of our officers at 15 years or higher hold advanced certificates. So something a lot of departments can't say. I'm not going to rehash the parade too much other than to say the prep went well. We really have perfected, I guess, what we put in place last year with the barricades. Big thanks to Ben Vorndren for loaning us the tractor. That made a huge difference in terms of muscle power that was needed to move those things around. But in all, put out 300 barricades, 150 traffic cones. So no small task, but with police and fire working together, we got that done. Just a little bit about last night. We only received 4 calls for pyrotechnics, but there was a lot of fireworks going off. So I'd like to just reiterate every year where our focus is, and we put the focus on where there's the greatest threat to life and property. And most of the time, that's in the interior parts of the neighborhoods. So we just don't have the personnel to be out on the beach trying to chase down fireworks. And we went back and really looked at difficult. So rest assured they were out there actively patrolling and looking for the greatest threat to stop that. So that's where that stands. The traffic cameras are live. There's a prominent place right on the town website where they can be accessed by the public. That project seems to be working very well. Working with our neighbors in Currituck and Southern Shores to provide them access to the data as well. So with that, take any questions you might have.
How you doing the low-speed vehicles or legal golf carts?
Doing as best we can. I looked at that today. Over the last 30 days, I had about 14 stops that were specifically LSVs or golf carts. So the officers are definitely continuing to put a focus on that. I've had a number of people contact me and say, hey, we saw an officer stop the cart. We also went out to the various vendors in town that are renting them and asked them, hey, give us the same spiel you give people when they rent a cart so we can hear what you're telling them so that we know when they tell us they've never heard this, if that's the case. But also it gave us an opportunity to talk with those staff members and tell them what we're seeing, the biggest issues, and reiterate to them that we're out there and we're looking for these things. So I think that was pretty effective, especially those 2 large companies that operate here in town. So I think I won't say we're making headway because we're still seeing the problems, but we're addressing them head on.
I think one of our folks, we got an email earlier tonight saying that there was going to be a public comment, and one of the points that this person was thinking about raising, I guess, was the idea of electric vehicles on the sidewalk. Are you, I know that is not, electric bikes, I'm sorry. That is something that is permitted, right? But I'm just wondering if you can comment on that.
Sure. So right now, our town ordinance bans any motorized vehicle from either our sidewalks or our pedestrian pathway. The discussions we've had are the state of North Carolina defines e-bikes as bicycles. They took that extra step to put it in its own category. Where that becomes the greatest issue for us is if you look at the Village, for instance, every time that a sidewalk stops and goes through an intersection of a state-maintained roadway, that e-bike becomes legal, illegal, legal, illegal. So if we were to have a crash at an intersection with an e-bike and somebody was riding it, if the crash occurred inside the intersection, there'd be no violation. It'd be they were operating on a state-maintained road for that brief period of time. So it creates a real issue from the standpoint of educating the public on what is and isn't legal. But as it stands today, our ordinance does ban motorized vehicles. So for purposes of operating on our sidewalk, it still meets our definition of motorized vehicle. So it's something I think we're going to continue to look at. Joe and Drew and I have had conversations on it, and we're also looking around the state to see what others are doing to address it. I know that NAGS had recently changed their ordinance to allow e-bikes to operate on their path. So one of the things we're watching to see how that goes, or what issues they might encounter that we want to consider.
How about the electric scooters and electric skateboards?
They are clearly not authorized. The one-wheelers, the motorized scooters are absolutely meet our definition of motorized vehicle and can operate on the bike path. The officers are trying to get out there and educate those people as best they can, but as you've seen, it's an issue.
Thank you for reminding us about this distinction.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
trained you well.
She trained me well.
All right, good evening, council. I'm going to try to go through this, but I don't want to rush because I do have quite a bit of information to share with you. Okay, so the first thing that I want to go over, you all were provided a memo, and this will be available on our website. But one thing that I have stressed several times is an increased effort to boost transparency and communication with all of our stakeholders. And with that comes a progress report. As council is aware, you all met in January to discuss strategic goals to help achieve your 2032 vision. I have outlined them here and provided the logo as well. There are 6 unifying principles, and I just wanted to provide a little update to show what staff has done to bring the 2032 vision to fruition. And I'm not going to read through all of these, but this is the form that was essentially created after the meeting. I know it's small to see on the monitors, but again, this will be available on our website. But there are 18 total strategic goals that they all fall under a certain unifying principle. And in the January strategic planning session, council was able to weigh in on these and prioritize and rank them in orders of importance and what mattered most. And with that, I am proud to say, oops, a couple of my check marks are off. I'm sorry about that. But staff has worked to help these come to fruition. Each of these action items has been either completed or is in progress. And again, I apologize, my formatting shows those check marks out of place. So there should be a checkbox next to each of those items. Again, I won't go through all of them because there are 18, but just to kind of point out a few, for example, with enforcing the standard or the special use permits and ordinances, as you're aware, staff is actively enforcing the trash and recycling rollback ordinance, as well as working with businesses to get back to a post-COVID compliance. Even with the public safety building, we've worked with them to establish relationships with their new staff member, Erin Dubin. I'm going to mispronounce her name, and I'm very sorry. But working with her to create that relationship and also work with them to move forward with the public safety building. And again, this is just the other half of them. And as you can see, thanks to my perfect formatting on this slide, we have met all of these action items, or they're all in progress. And again, these are all highlighted in the memo that I provided to you, but I just wanted to show that staff does have that in mind as we work to serve council and the community and all of our stakeholders. We want the best for the town, and we do, everything that we do is for a reason, and we work hard to make sure that we take all things into consideration, and we want to get to 2032 and be able to look back and have a big old check mark in a perfect checkbox saying that we have completed all of these things. So again, I'll put this memo on our website so everybody can see, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention to show what we've done to go forward with bringing your vision to vision. So switching gears a little bit, I did complete a communication survey that ran from March to June. I only had 89 respondents, but this was posted on our website, social media, and in our newsletters. This is a little bit difficult to see, and I'm sorry, but it does show that we did not have any respondents that were younger than 35. So there is a small demographic that I am looking to actively engage and reach them, because when we look at our transient population, we have a wide range of audiences that come here. So even though our year-round population is constant, our transient population, these are the people that we need to be communicating things like trash and recycling enforcement to, as well as safety information, because it could save someone's life. So this was really helpful to me to show where that gap is and where I can focus my efforts with getting out messaging. This was just something interesting too. This is how people currently receive their news. And again, the percentages are small, and I'm sorry about that. But we do have, despite the demographic that responded to this survey, we do have a lot of stakeholders that do receive their information digitally via our website as well as e-news. They also get information via email, whether that's correspondence with staff members directly, or if they get it from OBX Today or the Outer Banks Voice. So it is interesting to see that even though we do have an older demographic, we do still have a little bit of a digital literacy that is really interesting, because you would otherwise think that it would be contrarian to that. And this is a slight variation of the previous question, but just how do you prefer to receive your information? And it kind of parallels from the chart before, but it does show that how people are receiving their news is how they want to receive it. So it helps kind of drive that point home that the way that we're getting our information out is working. And this is just some other information, what they're interested in. And I think this is interesting because you have a very invested community. These are all matters of importance that you don't need to see the percentages to know that your community cares about what we're doing here. So again, this really helps me figure out what is important and what we put out. So I think it's just very special to show that we have a very invested community. And I mentioned this before, but all of this survey was helpful because I am working on a communication plan, but it also is useful in identifying those deficits in our audience and bridging the gap in between who we have currently invested and who we can reach. And with that, it's a lot of fun for me because I can find new ways of reaching these stakeholders. And I'm very grateful to town staff and Drew and council because I'm a very creative person, and this has been very, very fun for me. And I have two examples specifically, Instagram Reels and the sitting and standing duck. So Instagram Reels are, if you haven't seen on our Instagram page, I've experimented with two little reels. I made one from the 4th of July parade, and then I think it was last week or the week before, I just went around town and took quick little videos. Was part of a multi-agency press conference. This video is on our website. Dare County streamed it, but it was just a great press conference organized by Rachel Tackett at Kill Devil Hills to have lifeguards, Dare County Sheriff's Department was there, different PIOs, just to go over different things. Each agency was represented, to go over beach safety and things that our beachgoers need to know. So this is available on our website, but I would like to thank Merrick for coming in, and he had the pleasure of discussing beach holes, which, as we know, is an increasing issue here on the Outer Banks and beaches in general. Jeff mentioned this already, but the live traffic cameras are on our website. I've tried to make them as accessible as possible. They are in a drop-down menu, but I also do have it located at the top of our website. I don't know if you can kind of see where I'm circling there. So you can go on there. There are 3 different views, but thank you for getting that put together, Jeff and council. I'm very excited about that, and a lot of people have interacted with that on our website already, so this has been a great resource. Jazz Festival it's coming. It's coming. Sponsorship packets have gone out. I'm looking at new sponsors and new partners. We have a lot of new businesses in the community, so I want to reach out to them and explain what the Jazz Festival is and what potential there is for involvement on their end. And I do have digital and print ads that are currently live, and there are additional ones forthcoming. And then events update. Sorry, I'm speeding through this, but I have thrown a lot at you. We've had 3,500 attendees at all of our summer events so far, despite even 2 magic shows being moved inside due to weather. As of yesterday, merchandise sales are at $1,500, and we have 225 bricks sold to date. And as you know, yesterday was the 4th of July parade. We'll go through this debrief next month, but I just wanted to show a couple of views. This was leaving Scarborough Lane at the end of the parade yesterday, and this one is stuck in my head. This is Christopher Drive, and it was bizarre just to look back and see how many people attend the parade, and it's great that we have that much community support for this event.
Family right in the front left.
I did that on purpose. So again, we'll have more of a debrief on that next month. And they mentioned this yesterday, but this was the giant puddle that Surf Rescue was diligently helping to clear out. With Sandy, I was about to say, you can kind of see him back there, but they worked really hard to get that, and Sandy mentioned that this was SOAR in action, so I wanted to highlight this because it was a great effort. On Tuesday, we have our first movie on the green. It should be a good one, and it's Jaws. Who doesn't like that movie, especially outside in the dark? So we're really excited about that, and that is everything. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to be super quick tonight for a change. I'm going to give you a quick finance update. Our monthly cash balances, we ended June 30th with $12,562,952. Excluding the beach nourishment bonds, it was $12,448,000. Compared to last year, we've had a 4.1% increase. And this just shows our general checking account balance. We ended just over 1 million. This was 8.4% of our general fund cash balances. And then the remaining funds are still in our investment accounts, the majority being in the North Carolina Capital Management Trust portfolio. You will notice the FEMA Beach Nourishment account was brought to zero, and that was actually closed because we had used all those funds in that account. And then just a quick update. So we are actually going to provide our financial statements 1 month after. So for instance, tonight I would normally provide the June update, but I'm going to give that in August. It gives us a little more time to complete our bank reconciliations, review everything, evaluate everything with Teresa, and then for you as well to review them a couple weeks before the next council meeting. So I should have the June financial statements to you next week. And if you have any questions, just let us know.
So what you're saying is you'll probably, within the next couple of days, give us the detail for June and
Yes.
for May, and then July, you'll give us the highlights.
Yes.
We'll have looked at the details, so we'll have a little bit of knowledge.
Yes,
That's a good idea.
That was a question I was thinking about asking when we, during the consent agenda, when we approved the audit, and just reminding me how much Teresa and her crew are involved in our kind of day-to-day.
Yes, so Teresa actually, so at the end of every month after I complete the reconciliations, we send Teresa the financial statements before they are forwarded to Drew so she can review all the accounts, both for the capital reserve fund and our general fund. She gives us any suggestions, issues that she sees that we can try to correct before we get to the end of the year. Especially this month, it was a lot more for her to review because it is the year end. So we really wanted to allow a little bit more time, and then also for you guys to have a little more time to review them before the council meetings.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any other questions?
Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, item number 11, mayor's agenda. I have a few items here. First of all, I have my mayor and chairman meeting scheduled for 7/18. It'll be hosted by Southern Shores. I did send a letter out to council and to Drew today. It's time to start working on the town manager review. And you'll see the timeline is you did get a blank review form, but there's no need to do that until we get Drew's input, which is going to be due on the 21st. And then our input will be due back to Monica on the 28th for consolidation, and August 2nd, we'll schedule a closed session for the review. Just a note, Dare County put out a notice, council filing starts on Friday, I believe at noon, the 7th, and runs through the 21st. Anyone interested in being a candidate for the town council? And lastly, a big thank you, and I did send a note out today, and I think I speak for council, and to basically Drew and Kay and Betsy and the two chiefs and all the staff, everybody involved and all the volunteers. It was just a great 4th of July parade. Thunderstorm cleared out just in time, Looked a little bad about 6:30, but it was gone. It was a nice, warm, hot day, and there's no doubt that the snow cones and the watermelon and the waters were big hits in the park. And I don't know how many, I think Jessica or someone was counting the snow cones today, but there was a lot of snow cones that went out. So, and that's all I have, and then we'll move on to item number 12, and that's the council members' comments, and starting with Mayor Pro Tem Monica Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mayor. I just also want to echo the comments about the great parade, and I think just brings this, as we heard in the public comment, this great sense of community. It's just pride in not only our country as a whole, but in our town and what we can offer. I get so many compliments from people who have such great things to say about Duck, and I think it's just a really testament to our staff and to the council and our great volunteers. So it's really something I'm very proud of and always love to hear. So, and the events have been great. The story time, I got to go to with my granddaughter and really enjoyed it with the chalk art. Of course, everything, all the concerts. So it's just been wonderful to see the community, and I really appreciate it. Also, I like that reaching out to the vendors, the tent vendors. I don't know about the drug paraphernalia vendors, but who's the other vendor we talked about tonight? As I point to Joe, I'm not sure why, but who is the other vendor? Well, the tents and anyway, appreciate that collaboration that we're looking for with hearing from folks. Oh, the golf cart folks. Just, keeping that communication going and that engagement with the businesses, just really great stuff. So that's my big thank you, and I am planning to run, and I hope we get great participation. I wore a vote sign yesterday, just trying to get everybody to think about voting. It doesn't matter who you vote for, you just got to vote. So I'll be running. I won't be able to sign up until next week, but I will be.
Thank you, Monica. Councilmember Rob Mooney.
Nothing for me.
Councilmember Sandy Whitman.
I'd also like to say thank the staff and everyone for the parade yesterday. It was great. And all the events that we have in the park and in the amphitheater this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Councilmember Tony Shano.
Nothing specific other than thanking again everybody. I know it was a lot of work, and it's obvious, you can see that it's a lot of work, and you can see kind of the concern and stress that everybody has that everything's going to go okay, and it did, thankfully. But I think, what's really important is the appreciation of the people who are out there watching the parade. I mean, they really enjoy it. They're having fun, they're having a good time. The kids are there, the kids are all dressed in different outfits and everything. And it's a piece of Americana that's really vanishing from a lot of towns in our country, unfortunately. And it's nice that we keep that tradition up. And these little kids will come back and they'll remember it and they'll bring their kids and it'll be a wonderful tradition. So I hope that all of us continue it, and I hope our successors continue it for many years. It's a wonderful event. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Item number 13, at this time I'll open up the podium for public comments. If anyone would like to address the council this evening, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. There be no one standing up to come forth. I'll close the public comments. Any other business to come before the council this evening? There being none, I'll remind council that our next meeting will be the regular meeting on Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. The meeting is adjourned.